Thank you. I was kind of inspired for the title from the old Bullwinkle cartoon. But what this starts with is Penney's game. And Penney's game is a coin flipping game where you have two players, player one and player two. Player one chooses a sequence of 3 outcomes from a coin flip. Player two then chooses their own 3 outcomes from a coin flip. And an umpire flips a fair coin, and whoever's sequence comes up first wins. Martin Gardner talked about Penney's game because it's an example of a non-transitive game. No matter what player one chooses, player two can choose a pattern that puts the odds in player two's favor. And that's shown by the chart down below. And I started playing around with this years ago, and what I started moving on to were the matchups that are not on that chart. Those charts are the best odds for player two, but of course there's lots of choices for player two after he or she has made their decision, after player one's made their decision. So I was looking at heads, heads, tails versus heads, tails, tails. And the question I had is, when will player one win this particular game? Now, to begin with, since both of the players are starting with heads, if the umpire flips a bunch of tails in the beginning, that has no effect at all. So leading tails doesn't make a difference. Both sequences start with heads, so that first heads does not make a difference. But then things start to matter here. So after that first heads appears, if the subsequent flip is heads, then player one has got to win, because there's 2 heads, and either you have a string of H's and then a T finally appears, or it just goes H, H, T, and player one wins. So player one has to win if you get the 2 H's in a row. However, if after that first H you get a tails and then a heads, the game actually resets itself. And you can start off with a string of either an H and then a T, or a bunch of H's, or if 2 T's show up, then player two wins. But the game resets if it goes tails and then heads. So working that into a probability, the probability that player one wins is P, which is equal to 1/2, which is that second heads appearing, or tails and then heads, so 1/2, 1/2, and then the game resets, which is the second P. And solving for the probability, we see the probability that player one wins is 2/3. Now, what I started looking at was what happens if you don't have a fair coin. So if the probability of tails is little p there, then what I have on that formula on the bottom is, again, heads comes up, so that's 1 minus p for that second heads, or tails and then heads, so p and 1 minus p. And f of p, the probability that player one wins, is a function of the probability for the unfair coin. So I started looking at all the different matchups and all the different outcomes playing with an unfair coin, and then the question became, well, what will make this a fair game? What will make the probability that player one wins equal to 1/2? So I take that formula from the previous page, set it equal to 1/2, solve for p, and there's my unexpected appearance, because without any rectangles, there's the golden ratio. And that's my talk. Thank you.